our job at Doris, we believe a lot of times, is to take folks out of the concrete world and into the abstract world so we can solve problems differently. When we get into abstract thinking, Meghan used the word divorce, which I think was a great way. We can sort of let go of maybe the scary components that we have to hang on to as humans, and our mind can free up to think differently.
Hey, it's Nikki Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it. Hey, it's Nikki, and I'm here with the co-owners of Doris Research, Sam Julka and Meghan Tooman. And I love what we found on their website to help us with this introduction, because we stand behind this at People Forward Network and also definitely Gut Plus Science, which is what started it all. Here's the thing. Life is too short for bad workplaces and bad leaders. Let's face it, 40 plus hours a week is a lot of time that we spend anywhere, let alone the work environment, particularly a work environment that sucks. Nobody wants that. Leaders, we are changing the game on this, and we're all called to do so. So we've come a long way in workplaces becoming better. It's a hot topic for many, but we can't get to this place we are right now and rest on our laurels. We've got to continue to do more and continue to transform these work experiences for people so that the outcomes are the outcomes that we want in our work and the things that impact those that we serve. So Sam and Meghan, they love what they do and where they do it because they get to help other people love what they do and at least love where they do it. Oh, I love all of this, ladies. Welcome to Gut Plus Science. Today, we are talking about how these leaders, me, you, all of us in this Gut Plus Science community, lead people to a place that they are sharing their voice and that voice is heard. And we're making decisions in our business based on the most important people in our workplace. And so you have a main tagline with Doris that is the voice of the people who matter. And Sam, I would love for you to kick us off in helping me to understand, and all of us, what does voice of the people who matter mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Thank you so much for having us too. It's always fun to talk about what we do and kind of nerd out over it with folks that maybe appreciate and value the same things that we do. So the story behind voice of the people that matter or who matters is interesting because probably in our gut, when we started the business, we knew all along that that was sort of what we were doing. And that's what inspired us to take action on the types of projects that we did. Truth be told, it probably took us 9 years or 8 years or so to come up with that as our actual mission statement for the business. And it was one of those situations where it just came out of frustration. I think I blurted, our job is to be the voice of the people who matter. And I think I was trying to articulate this to someone one day, and I'm sure it was followed up with, what does that mean or why? And to me, it's really just this concept that when we're making big change to something, and a lot of times we're working in the built environment, we're thinking about maybe places people might come to work. Usually those big decisions are made by folks that don't maybe always have full context of everyone that has to engage in that environment. And so we've always sort of felt like our mission was to help just bring those voices to the table that don't always maybe get to be at the table or haven't historically always been at the table. So I think I wake up every day with that on my mind. How am I going to make sure that I tell this story for these people, with these people, through research, in a way that will be honor what their voices are, and then also in a way that can inspire leaders to take action. And that's a very delicate tightrope that we walk. And we could talk more about that. But that's what it means to me. It's very important to me that we continue to always strive for that.
I love that. And Meghan, before I ask you to share your perspective on your mission statement that I think is so powerful, we're about advancing leaders who claim to be people first. We call it people forward because I think that's the outcome. Sometimes the verbiage of people first is a overused term, I think, but not then acted on. And people forward is the action of really the outcome, right? When we are doing that well. And what I am hearing you say, Sam, just in this, couple of first few minutes is the voice of the people who matter. Those are our people that work on our teams that are the most important to invest in so that everything else works. And when we tie this together with anyone who's listening on the show, they're wanting to be that people first leader. And the greatest thing that we can do is listen to the people that are closest to the work we do, right? Because those are our number one people that matter. And so just really looking at our own workplaces and how we help those people that represent our team have a voice and help us shape out the future and make sure that they feel they matter and are making a difference. Just plugging in like why this show exists and why People Forward Network exists and why your work is so important. So Meghan, would love to hear your perspective on your mission of voice of the people who matter and what that means to you.
Yeah, so I think more technically, when it comes to our research and how we actually implement it, we make sure that the samples that we are representing are truly representative of the whole organization and of everyone that works there or comes into contact with it. And so we tailor all of our methodology to make sure that we are meeting people where they're at and in a manner that they can give us their perspective. And that is very different depending on who you're talking to and how you're talking to them. And so we're very mindful of that so that really when we are reflecting back to leaders, as Sam mentioned, that it really truly is inclusive of everyone at the organization.
When we came up with that mission statement, voice of the people who matter, I think we liked that it was a little, I forget sometimes, I think that it might be a little controversial and it sounds exclusionary, but our value set is really, if you don't understand that the voice of the people who matter is everyone, we probably don't have value alignment, And so to me, I almost forget that sort of nuance in that statement sometimes, because to me, the voice of the people who matter is everyone.
That's so good. One little note here is we have a shared friend that recommended you for this show, Vince Freeman, and he said, man, Meghan and Sam, they're like this dynamic duo that share such a same passion, but they come from a different angle. Well, I will tell you, we hopped on here today, and for those of you that might see them on video, they're wearing the exact same attire. And I was like, did y'all plan that? They're like, no, this happens all the time. So what a great partnership. Like you're waking up and like channeling each other's energy and wearing the same clothes. The part that stands out and, they intersect in this voice of the people who matter as the mission for why they do the work they do. Meghan is the quantitative side of the data. Sam is the qualitative side, sharing the same mission. So you're going to hear that throughout the episode, that's the difference or intersection for how they come together as partners in this organization. So I want to hear, Sam and Meghan, I love to think about the listener that's in their car driving, they're maximizing their time and listening to an episode. And before we go any further, I want them to kind of evaluate where they're at right now from like how they're thinking about this and like framing up this thought here. And so I want to kind of think through challenging the mindsets that don't work to be able to unlock the voice of the people who matter in organizations. And so what is, the mindset that we take, but most importantly, help us think about the things that don't work. When we're thinking like this is never going to work. This is really where we have to be. And listeners, again, I do this all the time. It's not to call you out. It's to hold us accountable or to give awareness because we hadn't thought about it before. It's like, oh, wait a second. Okay, get that out of here. This is my focus. So what is the mindset? And give us some samples of things that don't work.
Here's what's challenging. Meghan and I are leaders, right? We lead an organization so we can constantly empathize with how it feels to receive the voice of the people who matter, right? And that at times is scary. We know that can be scary for leaders, right? Sometimes people are fearful. Leaders might be fearful even of hiring us in the first place because they'll articulate, I don't want to open Pandora's box and hear what everyone thinks, because then I might not be able to satisfy all their wishes, wants, and needs, right? And that's common. That's a very big fear that leaders will have. The important thing to note is that when we start to go out to ask these questions, you as a leader do not need to have all the answers. In fact, you should be looking back to the voice of the people who matter for the answers, right? And so there are things that you know how to do, you know how to lead your organization, and there's a lot of nuance in your organization that you know about. the concept here is of probably, I'll talk about this a lot, but maintaining that growth mindset, maintaining curiosity. I'm curious enough about the people that I work with and for and on the behalf of as a leader to understand what is their perceived, perspective of the challenges that we might face. And we will find challenges, even though we're digging up a lot of times information about the built environment, we will find very, very, I'm going to call them maybe high level challenges, right? Things that you're trying to figure out, how does this even relate back to the built environment? It might be, I don't feel included in my team, or something along those lines. As a leader, you might be presented with things like that we just need to sit in for a while. And we are not going to have the answers for that in the next week, month, year. It's acknowledging that those exist as a community. And then, we'll be able to at least start to move forward, even on small change, because you don't, as a leader, have all the answers. You need to probably go right back to those same people and start to collaborate. That's what I see. Meghan, what do you see different?
No, we have the same answer. Similar, at least, with Pandora's box. That we hear that a lot. What if I can't solve the challenges that you bring to us? And the key is not to have all the answers, as Sam said. One of our core values here at Doris is to lead with listening. And sometimes just asking the questions and listening gets you a lot further than not asking at all. Even though you don't open Pandora's box, doesn't mean that the stuff's not still in there and happening. And so sometimes just shining light on it is enough to acknowledge and say, hey, we know this. And we have constraints, very real constraints, and we have different priorities, things like that. But it now gives you a path of communication and a bridge to which to have the conversations that might be tough conversations. So we're not saying shy away from those. We're saying maybe lean in, listen, get the perspective, and then you can have an open, trusting conversation.
I think, it's a great reminder for all of us to stop trying to be perfect or postured as leaders. And I think there's a big initiative right now in the world tied to being people first, which is to be authentic and be vulnerable and be real. And you think about why leaders don't want to open Pandora's box for these things that you shared. And it's this fear of like, but I'm not going to look perfect. And I'm a leader and I have this title versus we're in this together. And it's really empowering for someone on your team, whether they've been there for a long time or they're newer, to hear you say, I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure it out together. And being able to like hear from you, it's like, it's not just me, the leader, doing all these things. It's a collective effort. And there's engagement that comes from that because people take ownership. At People Forward Network, our brand mascot is very childlike. It's a stick figure. His name is Manny. We call him Meaningful Manny. And he talks like a cartoon character, kind of like Mickey Mouse. And one of the reasons for that, because I've had so many questions over time, like, why the childlike branding? Well, I think that if we as adults leaned into a lot of the things as a child before we got jaded and thought we had to have everything in our big egos that get in the way, man, you have more of an authentic experience where it's like, you're not questioning what you think you're good at. Like, you just roll with it. You just do it, right? And I think it's so much of what we bring as adults that is standing in the way, Does that resonate with you guys?
It's very similar. And Meghan, I bet you are thinking about this exact same thing I am. Meghan mentioned we have 4 core values. She's already mentioned one, which is lead with listening. I think arguably my favorite of our 4, well, probably one that has to do with eating is my favorite. But the one I do quite like is we call it intellect and wit for similar reasons that you just talked about. So we're researchers, and sometimes they'll think of researchers in white lab coats and, using big words and writing very lengthy documents. And from our side of the fence, we think that that's not very inclusive, sort of like your mascot, Manny, right? We used to have some stick figures in our branding as well for similar reasons. But intellect and wit just to us is if we're gonna try to engage in some of these really complicated topics, we probably need to take the tone down a little bit so that everyone feels safe. We don't have to get stressed out over the fact that we're trying to solve very complicated things and that it's all so serious all the time. So we'll often use a lot of puns or fun graphics in our deliverables because we're trying to make sure that people can just step back a second and take a deep breath and realize we're going to get through this, together. It's serious, but we can all engage in it.
That's really good. Well, since you've teased out two really awesome core values, and you mentioned one of them has something to do with eating, we're going to have to hear the other two. So lead with listening, intellect, and wit. What are the other two?
Yeah. So our third one is hungry yet fed. So I am notorious for asking what's for lunch at about 10 a.m. because I'm always hungry for some reason. And we actually provide lunch for our crew anytime they're in the office. Mostly it's probably out of selfishness because I'm always hungry and trying to get food around here. But it's also probably more metaphorical. We think as researchers, it's important for us to always stay hungry and, reading whatever's the latest in, qualitative research. We want to know what's going on. We want to know what's going on adjacent to our industry, any industry. So if folks want to go to a conference or, want to take time to read a book, whatever it might be, whatever they're hungry for, we as sort of the leaders of Doris want to make sure we feed that hunger.
Okay, so Meghan, bring us home on this fourth one. They're just getting better as we go. So what is the fourth core value of Doris?
Yeah, our last core value, but not the least, I would say, is ambiguity and grit. And this really lives in the fact that we don't know everything and we're okay not knowing everything. It harkens back to this idea of we don't have to have all the answers right now, and sitting in the ambiguity is okay. But having the confidence to know that we've got the grit to work through it and figure it out together. Because our day-to-day really is ambiguous. I mean, the data that we work with is ambiguous. We're helping leaders with fuzzy situations. It's just our whole world is ambiguity, and you have to be okay kind of sitting in that, especially to work at Doris.
That's so good. And I will just give you a compliment that if we look at voice of the people who matter, and then those four core values that we just learned, so aligned. It's like, and this is how, right? That's so good. It might have been, we are agile on this show to have natural conversations, but I'm like, if I would have known that, you know what? We would just dug in on those four maybe, or we'll have you back. I don't know. So now let's talk about how we do it. I'm going to kind of stay back here, play color with you guys, but I'd love to have a conversation, you two sharing with us. So how do we do this? What is the Doris way? And then I want to see your quantitative and qualitative approaches come out in sharing that.
So how we do it is through design thinking process. And I think one part that's really important is that we divorce problem defining from problem solving. And so the first half of our projects always start with both qualitative and quantitative data collection, identifying current state challenges that exist today. And then we stop and we talk to leaders about here's all the challenges. And that's a really hard meeting because we aren't problem solving at that meeting. And as a leader, our gut is to solve problems every day, right? We're putting out fires. What's the next fire to put out? And how do I solve this big problem? And we ask them not to do that and just sit and listen and hear. And then we move into strategy for solving the problems. And we go back to people and we say, all right, we've got these big, hairy challenges. How would you solve for them? Cross-departmentally, cross-functionally, up and down job levels. What does that look like? And then we come back to leaders with potential solutions, or let's say criteria for solutions. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not prescriptive. It's like you have to do this, but here are some things that if you emulated would move in the path of solving for those problems.
I love that. And then Sam, I just want to make a quick comment here on, this concept of like slow down to speed up. I think that's what you're saying is like problem defining versus problem solving. And we need to spend a slowed down time on the problem defining. And then I'm hearing what you're saying here. It's like, once you know the problems, then we're going to go ask the people that are closest to it, like our people first, the people that are first, right? And so it's just such a reminder, whether it's on this topic or others, we typically just speed into things, but it's taking the time and we don't have to go back and redo it. I'm talking to myself, preaching to the choir over here to myself. So yeah, Sam, tell me more.
Yeah, that's so right. It's slow down to speed up is good, or try to figure out how to make it simple to make it smart. One thing that we talk about, this is then going to get really theoretical. Megan and I were just talking about this morning in a meeting, but as humans, we live very much in the concrete world. We see concrete problems. We see concrete solutions. When we do that, a lot of times we'll jump to conclusions very quickly because we kind of have to. It's almost a safety mechanism, right? Our job at Doris, we believe a lot of times, is to take folks out of the concrete world and into the abstract world so we can solve problems differently. When we get into abstract thinking, Megan used the word divorce, which I think was a great way. We can sort of let go of maybe the scary components that we have to hang on to as humans, and our mind can free up to think differently. So we talk a lot about this model. It's called the analysis synthesis bridge model. It's not our model. It exists out in the world. I'd have to find that. Demerly, I think, is who wrote it. But it's the concept of starting with what exists today in the concrete world, our challenges our problems that we face today, and trying to articulate, taking all of those problems and helping us maybe document them in a very abstract way. So I knew this was my problem, but now I'm gonna use this model to bring it up, and we're gonna talk about it abstractly. Then when I want to go solve that problem, I'm first going to solve it abstractly. And once I've done that, then I can bring it back down. So it's the bridge in the abstract world that really helps us think of very new and different ways to solve things. And it's our job to get them up into abstract and across that bridge. It's their job to sort of take it back from that abstract world. So their job, meaning leaders or folks who can help implement something, they can take them back down that bridge, or back down the other side of that bridge into the concrete world. And it's hard to do. And if you have a group that's not as attached, they can kind of take you. We're almost like shepherds taking people on that journey. We're going to get you up there. We're going to take you across the bridge, and then you'll come back down.
There is a practice that I learned in my 20s that I still learn today. And it just popped in my mind that this is so that. Have you heard of the 5 whys?
Just keep asking.
Yes.
Yes, because whatever you thought was the problem, right? Again, why we're saying like, someone comes to the table and they're like, we got to solve this. And it's like, how many times, I'm curious I want to hear some examples here. How many times is this problem not the problem? Because we're trying to get to like the root and really what it is. That's probably like a manifested outcome, right? And so talk us through like how often that happens where, leaders that you're working with, they think that's a problem. You do kind of like the 5 whys thing. Maybe you talk to that a little bit more about what it is for those that don't know that. But then they thought it was this in this example. It was really this. And then here are some of the questions that we asked because we really knew this problem that was under the surface. I'm just curious to see that lived out and what, how often that happens.
So 2 that we hear most frequently. The first is we need more space. I need more of whatever, more meeting rooms, let's say, is a concrete example. And as a leader, the solve for that is square footage, right? I've got to figure out how to add more. And so when we take that up into the abstract, what we find is the word more is really nuanced. So it's not square footage that's the solve. It's they're not the right size spaces. Or half of our spaces aren't used because they don't have the technology included in them for a hybrid meeting. Or when I take a hybrid meeting, the lighting or the echo in this one's really terrible. Or I don't like the way this one feels. Or it's in that other department's space and we aren't allowed to cross that line. I can't use that one because that is their conference room, even though nobody's assigned it, right? So then what you can do is you can parse out, there's behavioral trust challenge here in between these 2 departments. That's a very different solve than building more meeting spaces or putting new tech, or what does it mean to feel comfortable in the space, both behaviorally and physically? And so it becomes a lot more nuanced. And now you don't have to add any square footage at all. You can leverage the space you already have and the people you already have. And the solutions are very different.
That's a really good one. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, Sam, you had an example as well.
I was going to speak to the very similar to what you were talking about, Megan, but just that sometimes folks don't even have the words to articulate what the problem is. So you'll ask them, and they'll say something obviously very concrete, not enough space, too loud, there's something, but then you'll ask them to either observe ethnographically or ask them to show you. You'll understand that it's they just didn't have the words to say maybe the arrangement is wrong, or they didn't understand that they just didn't have the words to say it's actually too quiet and one person talks and then my concentration is disrupted. Well, that's different than it being too loud. So we if we solved it for being too loud, it wouldn't really solve your problem. So we need to dig deeper and continue to ask the questions to figure out, well, what is the real need here? What's the real challenge?
I want to lean into the core value that you talked about, lead with listening. When we think about, okay, we're getting to this place, we got deeper, we're getting to really what the problem is. And then we want to listen based on the questions, the powerful questions that are intentional that we're designing to then help us get these answers. My key point here is I want you to speak to the power in the questions we ask. I come from a sales background and love sales. And I know that half the time that I'm not moving sales forward, it's the questions I asked in order to get to that next place. How does this apply in your world with, the design of the questions and what those powerful questions then do because we took the time to design the questions?
Megan, you have to answer this because we take great, maybe care and probably some pride in how we write what we would call protocols, which is what we're going to ask folks. But to us, this is why it's important that there is a Doris in the room, perhaps, is that our group is trained to do this. We're trained to know how to ask questions that are, let's say, not going to be leading. They're going to get us data that will be helpful to the people that need to, collect data. We take great care in this. And there's a huge difference between a group like ours that's trained to do this and a group that maybe just found SurveyMonkey online and started throwing some questions in. Like, there is a wrong way and a right way to answer questions. And I'm very seldom black and white about anything, but folks need to, because you can be very detrimental if you don't do this the right way. You can get data that is, I'll go on another little tangent here, but data is a commodity. I can get data about anything, right? If I don't know how to get data properly and I don't know how to deal with data on the back end properly, it's borderline dangerous, and we shouldn't be doing that. So we take great care in making sure that we do it the right way, which is probably why we have some pride in it. But Megan, I would, technically speaking, love to hear your answer.
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. One, it's the questions we're asking, and two, it's the methodology that we use in asking our questions. So very often, so I'm going to talk about the methodology first and then the questions that we put within. So we use multiple methods for data collection, one of which is interviews, one-on-one interviews for 30 minutes. We are having conversations with these people, and we are asking follow-up questions. And this is distinctive because of the fact that, one, we can actually physically listen and empathize and be that third party and record the data, certainly, but we can get a depth of data that's very, very different in 30 minutes than you ever will on an electronic survey. And so sometimes we're talking hundreds, 300, 400 interviews at an organization. So it's hundreds of hours that we're spending with their people, which is, it's not going to be a focus group. It's not going to be a survey. We do ask survey questions, but they're more quantitative in nature to give us some ranking and to help us identify how well an organization is meeting expectations, things like that. But I can give a really concrete example of why this matters. So if I ask you on a survey, where do you eat your lunch? And you say, at my desk. That's all I know. You eat lunch at your desk. If I'm having a conversation with you and I ask, hey, where do you eat lunch every day? And you say, at my desk. Then I, having this conversation, could say, oh, it sounds like that's not a positive thing for you. tell me about that. Yeah, well, our break room isn't really great. Whatever, the microwave's broken and the chairs are kind of uncomfortable. And actually, if I sit at my desk and eat, I can leave 30 minutes early. And so now I've got a breadth of information from just that question, that follow-up, that now tells me that the issue, one, there's a negative association with eating at my desk. Two, there are challenges with the break room. And three, this person wants to get out as quickly as possible. So that tells me a value set of that individual. Now amplify that by hundreds, and the depth of data that we can collect through those interviews is really huge. And so the types of questions we're asking are really open-ended. It's not, how many days a week do you want to be in the office and have somebody, pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's much more nuanced than that. And it's custom to each client that we have.
That's so good. You were saying something a minute ago, Sam, about data, and there was a word that you used, and I was like, what I jotted down is it's meaningful data. And I think it's intentional questions create meaningful data for insights that guide transformational change. And it's the people that matter solving this. I just want to give a quick soapbox. If you're outsourcing your culture to others, like if it's like people that outsource sales or culture, I've never seen it done. It does not work, right? You have to do this from the inside out. And this transformational change that happens because you're inside is you're getting the insights from the intention and the meaning that we talk about from the people that are here. Not like, well, I've done this for 30 years and whatever. That's fantastic. And there's probably some coaching there, but no one can, I'm just going to completely outsource this. In your world, you come in to help design those intentional questions, find the deeper level problems to create the meaningful data to walk alongside all of those people and including the leaders that matter to truly make the change. So before we head over to our lightning round, I want to make sure that everyone knows what you do, because I think that this can apply to a lot of different things for, data that makes transformational change. But I just want to make sure that people know this is how Doris helps.
So we think of ourselves as human ecologists. And so ecology is the science of understanding organisms in their interactions with each other and their environment, the world around them. Think any organism that exists will then apply to us, humans, people, right? So if you think about human ecology, it exists in a lot of places in the world. And so we can help when there is a human ecology issue. When we're trying to understand the relationships between people and some type of environment. It might be a physical built environment. It might be a virtual environment. It might be a constructed cultural environment that we all exist in our heads. That's where when a challenge might arise and you feel it's arising, we can be a group that can be very, very neutral and help understand and give you information to move your human ecology problem forward.
I love that. And I think that the key word for just helping people really grasp the problems that you come along to solve with all of what we talked about is the environment in which we work to help us thrive. So yes, thank you so much for all of this. I want to go into, I know it'll be a quicker lightning round today. So we call it a lightning round because it's just like super quick and speedy, but it makes it fun. We have asked for 7 years, your favorite book of all time or favorite recent read. What is the book you want to add to our list? I'll have Meghan start.
My favorite book of all time is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I need to add that to my list. Sam.
My favorite book of all time it's a little book called Outside Lies Magic by John Stiglo is probably how you pronounce his last name.
Oh my gosh. I think both of those in all of these years and hundreds of episodes, 2 new ones. I don't think I've heard those and I haven't read them. So thank you for that. So Sam, I have a little nugget that I learned about you. So does your morning routine time every morning or bedtime routine include reciting every president and every fact about presidents? Tell me more.
Yeah, I have an odd ability to recite every U.S. president, although the irony is that I have arguably the most terrible memory on the planet. Meghan is brought to meetings with me just so I remember things sometimes, and she knows it. But somehow I was taught that in 7th grade and haven't forgotten. But I'm dying and waiting for the day when I will add a female president at the end of that run. So keep it going until then.
I'm cheering that along. Keep it going until then. Yes. And so Meghan, I heard it was like a toss up in, you're like, I love Doris, but man, I really want that judge seat or being that lawyer to be in the courtroom all the time. What's that about? Tell us more.
Yeah, I love watching court trials, live trials, not just the summary of them or true crime, but truly watching all of the objections and everything. I think I would be a prosecutor if I was a lawyer, but man, defense attorneys have a true craft. And I think I like the gameplay, like the gamesmanship that happens within a court. It's a great human ecology experiment in my off time.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for that. And before we go, I want to make sure, because there was so much we talked about in such a short time, how can our listeners connect with each of you? What's the best way for just following up individually? But also, is there any resource or resources we want to point them to?
Yeah. So you can obviously reach both of us on LinkedIn. I think I'm at Sam Julka. What are you, Meghan Tooman?
Meghan Tooman. Yeah.
And then, you can always reach us at our info line, info@dorisresearch.com. We'll get back to you as quickly as we can with any, human ecology questions you might have. And we also have, usually we publish annually a little insight report. And I mean little, it's a pamphlet, but it has some pretty good nuggets that we can make sure that you have, Nikki, and happy to share that with anyone that's interested.
That's great. And to make it easy for you listeners, the links to their LinkedIn and these resources will be in the show notes. So check those out. Wow. Well, Sam and Meghan, you are doing world-changing work over there at Doris Research. And yes, life is too short for bad workplaces. Thank you for helping us to change those. And the core of all of this is being a great listener as a leader and learning how to do that well with intentional questions and intentional listening and taking action. And you all just broke this down so well. So here's my truth you can act on. Number one, being people first in your efforts means you are prioritizing your people and team members and employees to use their voice, to be heard, and to take action on what you're hearing. Saying, I don't know, as a leader, it's empowering. It helps you really connect human to human. It's humanizing for the workplace. And sometimes it's scary to open the can of worms of all of this data and asking all these questions. But if you don't do it, you never find the real solutions and real problems, right? To what you need in order to transform your workplace. So you don't have to know everything, and it's okay to get things back in that feedback that are kind of scary. We just all work on them together on a unified front. Fantastic. I love the takeaway of lead with listening. And leading with listening is asking powerful questions and spending time working through those questions to find trends from your people first, those people on the front lines and working throughout the company in order to find solutions. And I'm kind of going out of order here, but the prioritization of keeping problem defining in a section before we go to problem solving, dang, that is such a great takeaway. We have to spend time defining the problem. And so much of this is going deeper and deeper. I called it the 5 whys. Keep asking why to find that root cause or really the true problem so that when we go and try to solve, we really know the problem that we're there to solve. And intentional questions create meaningful data for insights that guide transformational change. Well, Doris Research, you really are doing some great things in transforming workplaces that help all people feel heard because their voice matters. We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.